The following podcast is an enticing media production. Thank you for listening to this podcast. You are now socially obligated to pour yourself a drink, and welcome to the Drunk Squirrel.
Occasionally, it kind of is a degree of signatures. We just, as we're starting to talk and warm into the conversation, we just hit record, and the intro plays and fades out, and in comes the conversation.
Sure.
I mean, it's kind of fitting for what our premise is you're going to go sit at a bar, you never know what you're going to talk about. And a lot of that is what that last episode was. You're going to sit at a bar, and you're going to face humanity in its best and worst, and the stories of people, you get the best and worst.
Are we recording now?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
Yep.
I don't want to.
We are recording.
I will tell one of the. It's a good story. Actually, two stories. I could go on three, but we don't want to do that. First one, and for those that were on episode one, this is kind of a tie-in to it.
I hope everybody listened to episode one.
If you haven't, go back.
Yeah, go back.
Stop now.
I go to these Vietnam helicopter pilot reunions, and we, all get together. We tell war stories and watch ourselves gracefully grow old and talk about our families. But a few years back, we had it in Washington, and I noticed this guy come to the door of our mini reunion for the guys I flew with in Vietnam, and his wife was standing there, and I walked over to him, and I looked in his eye. I mean, we've all filled out a little bit and everything, but and I looked in his eyes, and I immediately recognized who it was, Bob Piatt, and he was one of my predecessors in the gunships, and I hadn't seen him since Vietnam, and so we grabbed a couple beers, and he and his wife and I sat down. We started talking, and just trying to catch up after 50 years or so, and he really had a rough time in Vietnam because they had the Laotian invasion. I think it was either February or March of 1971. And he was shipped up north with another unit. And within 2 weeks, all 8 of their gunships were shot down or crashed. Mm-hmm. And he was in that group. And there would be troop ships, Huey troop ships, that 10 of them would fly into an LZ and 1 would come out.
Oh, wow.
Aircraft were flying at 10,000 feet and getting shot out of the sky because of heavy anti-aircraft fire, kind of like World War II things. So this is what Bob went through. And he came back to the States, joined the California Guard, and then was involved as a passenger in an aircraft accident, which permanently disabled him. Mm. So there's all this stuff and everything, and Bob and I are talking, and then finally he says, I got to go to the bathroom. So he gets up, and his wife is sitting there with tears running down, and she said, I had no idea. And it was one of those situations where I realized that I was so fortunate to have my experience that Bob was not fortunate enough because he didn't have anybody to talk to. Mm. And that's a difference between how some people carry on with their lives. And he's been to other reunions, and we've talked since then. And I'm not going to say it gets any better, but he's able to talk a lot more about it, and I think his wife understands that.
Something that we'll toss in emails for last episode and this episode is all the links for vets, and conversations matter. I've been talking to vets for years, and conversations matter.
It does.
It makes a difference.
Yeah, and the other story I was going to say is, we were down in New Orleans for a reunion, and I was sitting there talking to a buddy of mine. We were in the same unit, but we weren't there at the same time. While he was there, I was back in college dating Maggie and drinking beer. So
sounds fun.
It was fun. But we were sitting in the bar at the New Orleans Hilton, and there was this fella sitting there with his wife, and I got up to go to the bathroom, and the guy says, "Excuse me, is there some kind of pilots reunion here?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "We're Vietnam pilots." And by that time, Jay, my buddy, he was standing there. And he said, "Oh, well, I was a grunt over there." Well, Jay and I looked at each other, and we looked at him, and then we looked at his wife, and he said, "You're our hero." And of course.
And you said just the opposite in episode 1, right? Oh, no.
The grunts were the heroes.
I thought you meant he was telling you guys that you
No,
were,
I
got you.
He did say that. He said you guys were our heroes, but we said no. You're the hero here.
Yeah.
And then we sat down and we started talking to him and his wife and everything. He got up to go to a lot of bathroom, when they're drinking beer and stuff.
I mean,
so
it's true what they say. You don't buy beer, you rent it.
Yes, exactly. So anyway, it was, again, his wife and Jay and I. And we said, look, we did a lot of things over there, but whatever your husband may or may not have told you, he said he went through a lot, and we've always respected and the grunts, are our heroes. You're married to a hero. I said, if you don't realize that, you should, because of the things that he did and he lived through. It was just simply incredible. So, there's things like that. We like each other. They like us. We like them. But it doesn't change the fact, that the guys that we supported, they were the ones that we did what we had to do to help them and make it better for them. So,
I mean, I feel like you don't understand what unless you're in those situations, you don't understand what it's like to put your life in someone else's hands and theirs and yours.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it is, and nothing is guaranteed, but it is required that each of you do your jobs so that the other person walks away.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't think anybody ever second guessed what we did or didn't do. We all knew, and there was one guy that he decided he got there. He didn't want to fly anymore, so he got himself grounded. And I remember him. I don't remember his name, but basically nobody wanted to have anything to do with him because we were there to do our jobs. And we knew that some days were going to be worse than others, but we went ahead and did them anyway.
So moving past Vietnam,
Sure.
you went into what is an entirely different battlefield and became an educator.
That is kind of a battlefield, though, isn't it? I mean,
Look, I've been dealing with teenagers. Those little ingenious maniacs will find any way to destroy all that is good.
God bless you
I love
both.
them dearly. So you went into education.
I did.
What grade level? And what did you teach?
5th grade and everything.
Oh, you taught tweens. Man. Oh, man.
I really enjoyed teaching. I mean, as far as the kids go, they were old enough to know what was going on. But they weren't really big enough that they would want to challenge you.
They're still kind of, 5th is still kind of at that fun age, but they're starting to push that envelope more and more.
Yeah, and actually, if it weren't for the administrators and their parents, but for the most part, we were in a transition community because it was going from, at that time, farmland into suburban.
Now, is this
in Maryland?
Up here in Lebanon?
No, this was in Maryland. This was in Harford County, Maryland. And what was basically going on was there was a lot of people that were moving up from Baltimore County to Harford County because the taxes were less. And so they were used to a lot of Baltimore County rules as opposed to what was going on, Harford County rules. And
yeah.
Some of the parents were, why don't you offer this? And I said, because we don't.
Because we don't. That's a good answer.
We use a country school.
Yeah, and I mean, my child has never got a B before, and I wanted to say, well, she can't say that now, but I said, well, I'm sorry, but that's,
they got what
it
they
is
earned.
what it is, you know. But for the most part, I had, really supportive parents, and the kids were really good.
So we've had a couple different educators on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a question I've always wanted to ask them, but I can't because they're still in education. You still work with school systems. They still work with students. But what was one of the moments where you were like, I am going to kill this student or this parent because of just urgification and the lack of it? Yes.
Can I say the same thing about the administrator?
Yes, sure. You can. Oh, my God.
Actually, for the most part, the kids, I really didn't have any problems with kids. And I'll get back to that, aside from that. Parents are being protective of the kids, and I get that, especially as a parent. And I know that, okay, their child may have never gotten a B before. And they're going to say something, and of course they would. They're the parent, and they want to stick up for their kids and everything. I get that. The administrator, on the other hand, would come in, and he'd look around the room, and he'd be staring at all the stuff on my bulletin board and taking notes about all the stuff that had nothing to do with the lesson and not pay attention to what I was teaching. Mm. And then the comments at the end of, his observation would be, well, I think you need to add more of this on your bulletin board or do less of this, and had nothing to say about my teaching. So that's kind of what started me thinking, all right, how's this going to end up and where do I need to go from here? But I really enjoyed being with the kids. One day we had an indoor recess, and kids kept getting me out of this game, and I kicked the file cabinet, and I knew right away that this was not a really good thing. Went down to the nurse, and she says, yep, your toe's broken.
Oh, my.
So I came back up to the classroom. She said, keep your foot elevated. So I put my foot on the desk like this. And one of my students, Suzanne, you didn't really hurt me, but I'll never forget her name. She came up and she took her pencil, number 2 pencil, started tapping me on the toe. And she said, how's your foot, Mr. Beatty? And I almost kicked her. And I said, Suzanne, please stop that right now. She and I have been in touch. And I told her, I said, no, you didn't permanently disfigure my foot or anything. But, that was one Suzanne. The other Suzanne, from my first year of teaching, about 5, maybe 6 years ago, I get an email, and I said, it said, is this the Mr. Beatty that taught 5th grade elementary at Jarrettsville Elementary School? And I saw the name, and I says, yes, Suzanne, and I do remember you. And she, really sweet young lady.
That had to be really cool for her, actually.
It was so cool.
That response from you had to be really cool for her.
And we're back in touch. In fact, last 2 years ago, I guess it was, when we were down in Ocean City. Her parents have a place up on 7th Street or 2nd Street in Ocean City, Maryland. New Jersey.
New Jersey. Oh, okay.
And so she and her partner rode down. We saw each other on the beach, and it was like, oh my gosh, that was so cool.
How long had it been at that point?
2022. And I taught her in 1973.
Oh my God.
Oh
my God.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
She lives in Crownsville.
That's unbelievable.
Crownsville, Anne Arundel County.
How did she find you?
I don't know, but it's been great.
The Book of Faces.
The Book of Faces, yeah, I guess.
When she got out of high school, she joined the Marines.
Wow.
She's my favorite Marine. And then when we went down to the wedding in Baltimore in March, we went down 2 days early, and we went down, stayed in Annapolis. We had dinner. We walked around downtown Annapolis, and we were it was really great to see her and her partner and everything. And she's a very accomplished woman. Got out of the Marines. She works for Anne Arundel County. She's an EMT with Anne Arundel County.
Okay, yeah.
But we don't hold an exclusive end to PTS issues. Paramedics, firefighters, policemen, they all have the same issues. And she and I talked at length about that. And we still do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I've always said, look, if there's a time that you just want to talk about something or unload, I'm a phone call away. And, but I mean, it was really good to see her. And she's, like I said, she's a very accomplished woman in spite of me.
Inspired.
How long did you teach?
5 years.
Only 5 years.
I find it hard to believe that that's a very humble statement, but I find it hard to believe that it is in spite of you.
I was trying to learn how to teach.
Yeah, but you sound like one of the teachers who was truly real with their students in what they presented in educational terms, but also with who you were. And I think those are truly the best teachers you can find.
I like I said, I did enjoy teaching with the kids, but I had to, what I didn't know was that I still had my own struggles. Mm-hmm. And I was trying really hard not to really take it out on the kids if I was having a bad day. So I had to be careful about that, and it was basically, I was somebody that needed to be back in the military that could deal with things like that. Yeah. But what I did learn was I liked to teach. I think I was pretty good at teaching. And just about the time I left teaching was, as far as the Army was concerned, they said, yeah, maybe he'd be a good teacher.
And so that's when you went full time with as an instructor?
That morphed into the rest of my career.
Okay.
I can tell you from a teaching standpoint, as a student, my favorite teachers of all time were plenty taught me things like out of a book, right? Mm-hmm. The ones that I remember were the ones that I think were the most real with me. And I'll say, I will say names. Sally Pennypacker is my favorite teacher of all time.
Yep.
Still, I worked on Sally's cars for a very long time when I was in the car industry, a long time. And it was funny because I used to joke with her. I'd be like, remember that time you gave me crap about my homework? You never thought I'd be working on your car. Sally Marisic, she was one of my, but they had an impact, and it wasn't what they put up on the blackboard.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Teachers have, the best teachers have an impact on their students, I feel like. And the ones that the students end up remembering are the ones that it's not what's put up on the board. It's the personal impact you had on those students.
Well,
for me personally.
Yeah. And Suzanne said the same thing. The teacher she had the year before was our vice principal and was really an intimidating type of a person. I won't tell stories about that anyway. But anyway,
you're retired. You can tell whatever stories you want.
Well, yeah, no. It turned out I needed to have some elective surgery, and she made the mistake. Well, I hope they don't schedule it during this time period. And then I thought about that, and I came back and I said, gee, I'm afraid to tell you, but it's going to happen right in this time period, and oh my gosh, I'm going to have to get a substitute. And I said, yeah, you are. But, so, when Suzanne said that Suzanne G, as opposed to the other they were both Suzannes. One was B and one was G. Suzanne G, said she was so happy to have a male teacher her 5th grade year, and I kind of fit the bill, and she and I do remember her. I remember her fondly, from when she was my student and everything, and I'm just so excited, that. Oh, and the friendship. Yes, let's go back to the friendship on that thing, Marine, Army, Navy, yeah, she thinks she's got it, and everything, So when my grandson and I went up to Alaska in 2022 to do the Army presentation of my flag from Vietnam, which is a long story, which we don't really have time for, I was up there with the current Tomahawks, which are up at Fort Wainwright, Alaska. And I said, can you guys do me a big favor? I've got a friend of mine who is a Marine. And they all just kind of went, And I said, yes, she's a Marine. Army-Navy game's coming up. So I got a video of us, and I pulled out this banner I had made, and it just said, and I had everybody say, go, this is for you, my favorite Marine, Suzanne Gemignani. Go Army, beat Navy. And the whole company is behind me when we do that. And so when I saw her back in March, she said, yeah, that's it.
So have you been to an Army-Navy game?
Yes.
Okay.
It was the coldest Army-Navy or coldest football game I've ever been to.
Well, I mean, the time of year that it is, it can be pretty bad. It's not a good time of year for weather here in the Northeast.
This was in the old Franklin Field in Philadelphia.
Wow. Yeah, way back.
The big old bowl.
Way back. What year is this?
Oh,
I mean,
this was before kids, so I'm going to say early 70s.
I was going to say this is way back.
Way back.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we had to leave it up to my father-in-law to get tickets. And remember, he's the Navy guy.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, we were sitting on the Navy side.
Yeah.
The lone Army guy.
Yeah, so, but I didn't hold back. You never hold back.
No.
Whenever the Army did something right, I'm up there jumping in. And Maggie's kind of like semi-embarrassed. And
she's hiding her head.
Yeah, and my mother-in-law didn't go. She was back home. But my father-in-law was kind of like, I'm really with this guy, and he's my son-in-law.
Is this the guy? Are you sure about this?
Yeah. Can we get any paybacks on this?
So I went to a game at West Point.
Yes.
It was Wake Forest had a home and home with Army, and of course Randy is big weight guy, same as I, but. He's like, man, we should really go to this because this is a cool thing to say that you did, and what a fun environment that was. It was humbling to experience the pregame.
Yes,
there's an experience pregame if you go to one of the academy games.
Yeah, and
I'm glad that I don't know if I'll do it again, but I'm glad that I did it.
There's a definite between the rank structure in the Army and the Navy and all the military for that matter. I mean, as far as the officers, there's different ways you can be commissioned. Obviously, one of the more preferred ways is the academy way. I mean, but it's not how shall we say sacrosanct. We've had some very good general officers that ended up coming through OCS, so being an academy graduate is not a guarantee that you're going to make it to a general officer. Mm-hmm. But anyway, that's aside from the point.
Is that widely assumed?
It can be.
Okay.
Over my course of the career, I've known officers that went through OCS, ROTC, direct commission, which is probably the hardest one that you got to do, and then academy graduates. And you've got good officers, bad officers. It's kind of up to the individual officers as to how they're going to be when they're leading the troops. The ones that understand that the troops come first are the ones that are going to be successful. And in fact, a young friend of mine,
makes sense.
Yeah, a young friend of mine, as soon as he graduated from ROTC, I said, when you get to your duty station, you take your platoon sergeant and you get into his back pocket and listen to him, because he's the one that really runs the platoon, not you. On paper you do, but the platoon sergeant's the one that has the trust and the faith of his men. You're a new guy. They don't know you. They don't care about you. Mm-hmm. You've got to earn their trust. And I think he did, because when he retired, he was a lieutenant colonel.
Mm. It sounds that way.
He knew what he was doing.
What rank did you retire at?
Chief Warrant Officer 5.
Okay. So that's a non-com.
No. It's you have non-commissioned officers,
okay,
which are all the way up to command sergeant majors.
Okay.
Which is, and if you look at the pay grades, they go from E1 to E9. Warrant officers go from W1 to W5. I was a W5. And then commissioned officers go from O1 to O9? O10. O10, I think, is a general. Don't quote me on that. We fall in between.
Okay.
So basically, warrant officers are the commander's subject matter experts, as the way we're put. Now, the fact that an aviation company has 20-some warrant officers, and they're all the commander's subject matter experts, they're all pilots. Mm-hmm. Aviation is an anomaly because we have so many warrant officers. The bulk of the warrant officers in the Army are in aviation. If you go to some of the other branches, a whole battalion of infantry may have one warrant officer in the battalion. Same thing with artillery, armor, that sort of thing. There are just not a lot of them out there except in aviation. It's always been that way. I retired as a Chief Warrant Officer 5. And that's considered a staff officer.
Okay.
Because they're all in staff positions. And we're generally the brigade commanders as opposed to a battalion, which is lower down the food chain. We're in the higher echelons of the military, the Army, as far as the unit designations.
I can say personally, I appreciate the conversation that we've had on this episode and the previous one, part 1. If you haven't listened to part 1, you should jump back over and do that.
Definitely.
I appreciate the conversation. So my grandfather was in the Army and was in World War II. I was young, and I didn't appreciate, didn't appreciate's not the right word, but I didn't have the correct conversations. I didn't have the want to know that I have now, that I wish he was still here that we could have these conversations, stuff that I don't know. So I appreciate these conversations, and I have a lot of military. My uncle Tom is a retired Master Chief in the Navy.
Okay.
And he retired, I think, twice. He retired and then he went to work at the Naval Depot in Mechanicsburg, and then he retired again. But I had the first time he retired, had the opportunity to be at his retirement ceremony. The guns and the whole thing.
Sure.
It was what a humbling scene to be around in those situations, and rightfully so. What they do for those men and women is unbelievable because of what they've done for all of us. And it's just cool to be there.
The military does have a good way of sending retirees off. When I retired, Maggie and I got to thinking about it, and most of the retirements that I've been to with my workers up at the Indiantown Gap, you go pay for your own breakfast, and they have an awards and decoration ceremony, and everybody gets up and afterwards, and the retiree says a speech and thanks everybody, and we go up and say congratulations, have a good life, and all that. But we decided to do something a little different in the sense that why should I make people that are coming to see me retire pay for that privilege?
Yeah.
So we had basically an open house at the community club up there, where we just put the bill for, whatever they wanted, food and drink and everything.
Sure.
That actually made more sense to me, and if
they wanted,
and if they wanted to come, fine. If they didn't want to come, that was okay too, So, I wanted to celebrate the retirement with people, and not have them have to pay for that privilege, So that was one thing. But yeah, one of the things as far as retirement goes is that's kind of a big deal, because most people, okay, what am I going to do afterwards?
Yeah.
And I was tempted to be a contractor, turn around, take the patch off, put another patch on, and go work up there. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't sure I wanted to do that. And actually what happened was taking care of my parents stepped in, and that kind of changed everything. So that's primarily what I ended up doing before I ended up going, doing the disaster relief stuff.
Yeah, so one of the things that in the church has been a go ask Don, and there is that phrase, go ask Don, within St. Andrews, has been things like Habitat for Humanity, which you have been heavily involved in.
Not Habitat.
Not Habitat, sorry.
Lend a hand.
Lend a hand. I got it wrong, yes. And you've done a lot of work with Lend a Hand, which is, I'll let you speak to that since I got the wrong organization.
Basically, it's to go perform disaster relief for areas that tornadoes, hurricanes, flooding, is basically to go in, and we work in homes that by the time we get there, the people can't afford to have anybody do whatever work needs to be done to their homes, as opposed to people that do have insurance and have the means because they're already done with fixing up their homes. So it could be, as far as, some situations we've gone in, we've mucked out homes. We've done rebuilding. We built new homes in the event of tornadoes. So it's, my first trip was in February of 2006, and we went down to D'Iberville, Mississippi.
The Katrina zone, isn't that?
What's that?
That was the Katrina zone.
Yes.
Roughly. Yeah, okay.
That
Sorry,
was, Katrina was the end of August, and we got down there in February.
Okay.
And there was still cleanup going on down there. So
I was in the Katrina zone it was a year later, in Biloxi.
I was right across the Back River.
Yeah.
Or Back Bay.
And that was a year later.
Yep.
And there was still a lot of cleanup that we were involved in.
Yes. They put me on. In fact, on our trip leader was a guy named George Elliott, who's still active in Lend a Hand. And we had a long 2-day bus trip down there. And on the way down, he said, this is going to change your life. Mm. And I remember sitting there thinking, yeah, that's not going to happen. I'm a Vietnam vet. What can be more life-changing than war? He was right. Mm. And so we went down there, and first night there, I'm thinking, okay, what is it that I'm going to do here? Because I really, I'm a helicopter pilot.
Yeah.
What else,
You're not a home builder?
I'm not a home builder. I have no skills, what is it, maybe I can paint, but no, we're not at painting or anything. And then I hear somebody running around saying, hey, we need somebody to cut down trees. Well, I know my way around a chainsaw.
That's all they ever let me touch was chainsaws.
Oh, well, no, it gets better than that. This is one of those, oh, no, I wish I hadn't done that story. But anyway, so that's what we did. And we were cutting trees down, and then there was a tree that wouldn't move. We spent almost a whole day, and then when we got back to camp, somebody said, how's the tree over at such and such? And he said, it's still there. And then the associate camp director came up and said, we're not supposed to work on that tree. So we spent a whole day on this tree that never moved. So, and then there was a tree that came down, and it was between two trailers, and
that's funny. So you were working on a tree you weren't supposed to work on?
Yeah, and then there was my last day on the trees, where I was set the chainsaw up. It was hot and everything, and I was grabbing some oil to fill it with oil, and it moved, and I stuck my hand out. And
oh boy!
I looked at my hand, and I said, "Oh, that looks like the imprint of a grill." And so I poured water on it. I poured some oil on it and everything. I walked back and
oil.
And the guy, the crew leader, who was actually a young guy, I said, "What's the matter?" And I said, and he got this look, and he says, "Your hand's melting." And I said, "No, it's just kind of burnt." So actually, whatever I did between the oil and the water was good. Because when I went to the medics, they stuck my hand in a bucket of water. And then after that, they said, don't give this guy a chainsaw. So I ended up painting after that.
Painting.
So
no chainsaws for Don.
But the thing about it was I knew it wasn't easy work or anything, but this is something I could do. So Maggie and I went down about 3 months later and worked with a crew, and so like they say, the rest is history, and it's the one thing I will take back on the way back from that trip, because I sensed that, because the way the people were just kind of glazing with what they'd seen, and I said something to George, and I said, I think I need to say something to these folks, about what they saw down there. And I basically told them, I said, look, you guys have seen, I said, this is my experience. I've been to war, now I've been through a flood zone. I've seen things, I've heard things, I've smelled things that you can't undo. I said, when you get home, everybody's going to say, well, how was it down on the Gulf Coast? Like it's a big vacation. Mm-hmm. And you start to tell them what you saw, the reality of the whole situation. And for a couple of minutes, they're going to look at you like, oh my. And then a couple of minutes afterwards, they're going to say, or think, you're going to see their eyes start to wander and like, okay, how can I get out of this conversation because I don't understand what they're saying? Mm-hmm. I said, you're going to be with people that have no clue what it is you went through, but you're going to want to talk about it. I said, the only people that are going to understand what you're going to have to say is on this bus right now. I said, just be prepared for that. You've done a good job. You've done a lot of good things. But you can't expect people that haven't been there to understand what you've been through. And you have to talk about it. So.
Our stories matter. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that I've tried to emphasize is your story matters.
Yeah, it does. I mean, that's, you can put the information out there and hope people will understand that there's still help that needs to be done. And oh, by the way, Katrina still has homes down there that are not done yet from 2005. There's homes down on the Jersey Shore from 2012 that are not done yet.
And that's anywhere where there's been a disaster.
Exactly.
I mean, here in Lebanon, we still talk about that flood. And
Agnes?
I was going to say, you might have been the only one in the room who was alive.
Man, I was born in 77. Agnes was 72.
Sorry, I'm trying to do the math in my head.
How old do you think I am?
Well, older than me.
Oh, that's true.
But who was here in Lebanon. And I mean, that's still a story that happens. Yeah. That's been 50 plus years.
Yeah. I mean, that was another war story, but I mean, I was in Maryland and I've been in part of the Guard in 72. And we got activated and all the things that you don't want to check off on your aviation flight career, flying in a hurricane's not one of them, but we did.
Oh, so, okay, hold on. You flew in a hurricane.
Yeah.
In a chopper.
Yes. In Agnes.
That sounds interesting.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like there's an expletive to be said there first. What the?
Like, what the hell?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I heard the storm hit, and so I knew, and we knew it was coming. And so about 6 o'clock in the morning, the phone rings, and I get up, and it's my troop commander, and he said, we're going to send a couple of helicopters up, because of the hurricane. He says, you available? And I said, sure. So he came and picked me up, and we went down to the airfield down at Edgewood, and we were living in Bel Air at the time. And I put a poncho on to go out and pre-flight the aircraft, and that was a joke.
I was going to say that seemed...
I finally took the poncho off because it was just pouring. And we took off as a flight of two, and I was trail aircraft. And we literally, the Edgewood airfield is about 3 miles from Interstate 95. And we hovered down the main street at about 50 feet on down the main street of Edgewood, out to I-95. We hung a left on 95 South, and I don't think we were more than maybe 100 feet, probably not even that. And then we hit the Beltway, and we went around the Beltway. We were headed to Ellicott City, which normally in a straight line shot is southwest of Baltimore, and it's probably about a 30-minute flight.
Yeah.
We were going to the Armory up on top of the hill. And 2 hours later, we got to the Armory.
Jeez.
And fortunately, what they had done was they sent one of our fuel trucks down ahead of time to fuel us. And because we needed gas by the time we got there. And then we went out and we were basically pulling people off of roofs. We landed on a factory and pulled some people off the factory roof. We did one of those where we made a small LZ into a bigger LZ and pulled some people off there. So it was a busy day. And then the next morning, I got a call from the boss about 3 o'clock, and they said, we got to go find some guy that decided to drive across the creek, and he didn't make it. And so we spent almost 2 hours, and we never did find him. And then we went back out the next day. We went down to Columbia, and we were doing pretty much a body search by this time. We pulled a young lady out. But that was 2 intense days of flying. I mean, really intense.
Yeah, that had to be.
And
it's very interesting considering the flooding issues that Ellicott City has had recently.
Yes.
When I say recently, within the last 5 years or so, I guess it has been. And we were just in Ellicott City last weekend, and there's a lot of things that have changed. Some of the things that they talked about doing, they have started doing. The buildings that are at the bottom of the hill there they've torn some of them down now, finally. And, when you look at it, Nell spent a lot of time in Ellicott City. She worked at a steakhouse there. She worked at a tea house there, practically right next to the steakhouse. But now that the buildings are gone, you're looking at it and you're like, who thought it was a good idea to build this building over?
That was an old town, though.
Yeah.
That was a real old town.
And then when you leave Ellicott City and you're going up, the roads surrounding it, you realize that, and this is something that Nell has said a lot of the current problems that Ellicott City has with its flooding is all of the things that have happened up on the hill, all the development that has happened up on the hill, all the water just runs down there now. And it didn't used to do that. But it's still, you look at it and you're like, they put buildings over the water.
Yeah.
And it's like, how did anyone think this was a good idea?
Well, when we got down there, and I mean, we basically did 95 Beltway, Route 40 down to Ellicott City. Up on the hill we landed. And when we first came over Ellicott City, there used to be a big steel girder bridge there that was about a quarter mile downstream.
Oh,
and I'm thinking, holy crap, that's a big pile of metal to be downstream.
Yeah.
So that was one thought that crossed my mind. And then there was a set of railroad tracks that came up the Pataska River on the north side.
Yep.
And they were just, for about almost a mile, were just hanging there because the land had been washed out from underneath it. Now, that was bad enough. But then the fact that there were some stupid people standing on the ties, walking up this railroad track with a raging river underneath them, I'm thinking, no, I'm not going to pick you people up.
Darwin has his moment.
Because the railroad track there runs right next to the river.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
So, I mean, that impressionable moment was, I don't think I ever want to own waterfront anything. I will go to the ocean. I will go to the river. I will swim in the lakes. But I don't want to.
But a few miles back just sounds good.
Yeah. No, I'm happy living right where I am in South Lebanon Township with no streams or rivers.
All right. So I'm going to ask one last question.
Okay.
Traditionally, I harass Kenny, and we end with a moment that is a snippet of wisdom. So instead of harassing Kenny, we'll give him a bit of a break.
I'm surprised you're missing an opportunity to harass me.
Oh, no.
Are you getting soft?
Well. But I feel like it's a great moment. Instead of asking for Kenny's warm nuggets of wisdom, there's a whole joke behind that. Don, what is a piece of wisdom, just like one thing, that you would pass on to a younger generation from Kenny and I on down?
I've not mentioned anything about my kids in this whole thing. I mean, I've touched on Maggie being through this whole thing with me, and I'm so terribly grateful to have her with me.
Yeah, okay, I got to interrupt you. I'm sorry. When it comes to Maggie, I have sat in meetings with her at the church, and she is something else. She is a force of nature. Does not qualify Maggie. Margaret.
She answers to both.
Yeah, and I have learned that, but she is something else. So, but sorry, I'm done.
No, that's good. But the one thing I haven't mentioned, is our kids throughout this whole thing. because they've pretty much lived through this whole thing as well. And the one thing I have learned is, as far as the kids go, listen to them, pay attention to them. They have things that they want to say, they want to do, and people that they want to be. And I think we're both blessed to have the children and the grandchildren that we do have. And I'd like to say it was something that we consciously did, but I think the fact that they are who they are is a blessing. And I mean, I've heard many times, that, well, how do you deal with kids? Listen to them. And our kids, have had some issues and everything. And before I retired, somebody said, well, how do you deal with your kids? And I said, I listen to them. They've got something to say.
Sure.
Yeah. And, I mean, speaking a little bit to that, I have seen you in a whole bunch of different phases of life. But Christmas Eve, it was Christmas Eve this past year. I mean, you were beaming ear to ear as proud grandpa sitting there with your kids and grandkids in a way I haven't seen for a while. And that really reflects that moment of just listen to your kids. You are, I have no doubt, you are someone who your grandkids feel like they can come to. Your kids feel like they can come to.
Yeah, our oldest granddaughter graduated on Monday.
Oh, congratulations to her.
And
That's cool.
You got 4 grandkids.
Yeah.
So I have my favorite oldest grandson. I have my favorite youngest grandson. I have my favorite oldest granddaughter and my favorite youngest granddaughter.
That's very diplomatic of you.
It is. And it works.
Yes.
Because they're all beautiful kids.
Oh.
All great kids.
Awesome.
Don, it has been amazing sitting and talking. And I mean, we have been all over the place with a lot of different things, but you are someone who I love to listen to hear your stories and to learn from with your life experiences, because you have a lot of wisdom. And I think we've only tapped into a piece of it, but I am grateful for this moment that you've taken to share with Kenny and I. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
I think there's a generation that is sadly dwindling, that we will someday you're going to look back and realize that you didn't have enough of these conversations. Sometimes I realize that myself. So it was really great to have this conversation, because there was a lot of this. I met you way later in your life before all of these things, and so it was cool for me personally to get to know some of these things that I had heard a little bit about, but didn't truly know, and it allowed me to know you even better. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you both.
So
yeah.
So we're gonna wrap it up.
I absolutely. Don, you have been amazing. I mean, it's been...
we thought this was going to be 1 episode. It's turned into 2. Probably could end up being 6 if we really wanted it to.
I don't know why you and I ever think things will be just 1 episode.
Because we're dumb.
That's... Yep. Our wives agree with this statement.
Yes. These conversations that we're lucky enough to have about lots of different topics, I think... we sometimes, I think we know that they're going to go forever, and we're just like, nah, we'll be good.
We're professionals at this. We can do it quick. No, we can't.
Yeah, but you also don't want to curtail these conversations, because what we talked about before we started recording out on the deck was, Don asked, how's this work? You didn't, be like, we take the conversation wherever it goes. That's one of the cool things about this podcast, and it's not a normal thing for a podcast to go this way, but I feel like that is a natural thing to happen, and we allow the conversation to go wherever it goes. and we don't stop it because we have to stop it here because we wanted to talk about this. No, that's not how we go. Like,
and that's a good way to do it. I think.
I think it's really, really cool. I think we're doing something unique.
Yes,
and it allows guests to really, truly be themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
anyway,
and the bourbon helps.
The bourbon does not hurt.
Hold on, wait a minute.
Some bourbon. We never said we're drinking bourbon ever.
It's the end of the second episode.
So,
and who brings it up? It's Dawn.
We're drinking bourbon, by the way.
We are drinking bourbon.
Thank you, Dawn, for reminding that.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, you and I suck.
Yeah, we do.
All right.
Yeah, we do.
So this has been the Drunk Squirrel.
It has.
We're a couple drinks in.
We are. We're a couple episodes in.
We are a couple episodes in. You got to remember, when these episodes happen this way, it's several hours. Yes. Mother, we're not just drinking a whole bottle in one go. Love you, Mother.
Are we?
Shh.
Okay.
I have to get lectured by her if you say that.
Okay. But yeah, regardless, thank you to our guest for the past 2 episodes, Don Beatty.
Absolutely.
We appreciate you hanging with us, drinking some bourbon, sharing some difficult stories and some awesome laughs.
Oh, my gosh, yes.
We appreciate all of it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It was an honor.
And, Dawn, it's been great having you on. Thank you.
It was an honor. Thank you.
All right. Well, wrapping it up. And we will see you again in 2 weeks. So thanks for listening to the Drunk Squirrel podcast, and cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to The Drunk Squirrel. No need to pay a tab. Just be sure to follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and drop us a line, thedrunksquirrel82@gmail.com. Cheers.